columnist. Armstrong, was protesting by the likes of Al Sharpton and Jeff Johnson the reason why George Zimmerman is in jail?
Absolutely, that's part of the reason. And it's more of an indictment of law enforcement than it is the case itself. Obviously, law enforcement dropped the ball. George Zimmerman should have been arrested long ago, and he should face the music and let a court and a jury of his peers determine his fate. You know, my only concern here is this. There's no doubt in my mind, I agree with you, Dr. Drew, that George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin, and that's unfortunate. And I think Trayvon's parents have been an incredible example of what parents should be, especially after losing their son. But it's the emotional reaction by American blacks overall to George Zimmerman versus O.J. Simpson almost 2 years ago. O.J. Simpson allegedly killed Ron Goldman and Nicole Simpson. And the emotional outrage was they didn't care about the evidence. As it unfolded, no matter what was said, if the glove did not fit, acquit. They wanted O.J. to walk free. And when the jury reached the verdict, which shocked me that he was found not guilty, not saying he was innocent. I mean, you could talk to people. There were kids in classrooms around the country jumping up and down, hooraying for the fact that O.J. Simpson was released. My thing is, if George Zimmerman goes through a jury by trial, and just for some reason that we cannot figure out, like in the case of Casey Anthony, George Zimmerman is found not guilty, will many blacks in this country have the same emotional reaction, and there will be no violence or any more protests, and they accept the verdict as many Americans had to do in the case of O.J. Simpson?
Jeff, what do you think about that? Is there likely to be a reaction if the system does?
I think that, I think that Armstrong is reaching by trying to compare this to O.J. Simpson. I think even if we look within the last 6 months, we saw people rallying all over the country, a large number of African Americans, but there were those that were also white, Asian, Latino, for Troy Davis. Many people believe that there was evidence that created a reasonable doubt. Many people were aware of what that evidence was. People were mobilizing all over the world, not just in the United States of America. People were at the Supreme Court. I was one of those people at the Supreme Court when he was put to death. And when that happened, people did not begin to riot, even though they believed that the justice system did not serve them. I agree with Armstrong in the fact that I think that there's a great deal of emotion around this case, but it is not it's not driven down racial lines the way O.J. Simpson was. I marched with students from Daytona to Sanford, and they were black students, white students, Asian students, Latino students. People have been able to see the humanity in Trayvon. And as a result of that, they have responded. I think this arrest taking place will be able to create some calm. I think the process of the trial will be able to create some calm. And I think we just have to wait and see if people believe that justice is served or not, regardless of what the outcome is. But this is a very different kind of environment than I think we saw during O.J. Simpson.
Well, I think you're right. But, Bob, you were actually there when one of these violent eruptions occurred.
I also found O.J. Simpson.
You found him?
I found him down in Orange County. I was the first to find him.
Oh, interesting. And does this feel in any way the same? I mean, somebody brought up earlier this evening, well, let me just say, there are extreme types on both sides, both on the George Zimmerman side and on the Trayvon side right now. Could those people, the fringe, start to collapse with those of us that are trying to push this conversation to a higher ground are doing?
It could. I think this case is more similar to April 29th, 1992, the LA riots, where you had, this polarizing effect with the Rodney King trial. Really, what we're looking at is a prosecution. George Zimmerman's prosecution did a great deal to diffuse community anger and prevent a possible riot.
So you think what they're speaking up yesterday when they presented their case,
yes,
that was a good move?
They
didn't seem gleeful or glib or some of the other words I've heard tossed about how they seemed they're celebrating their actions.
Not so good for George Zimmerman. However, it was great for the community because it really saved and spared the community from civil unrest. We had all the ingredients. If you look back in history, and I was there at Florence and Normandy, April 29th, and I saw the very spark of the worst rioting in U.S. modern history. $1 billion damaged, 55 people killed. I saw and see the same ingredients here in Florida. Had this man not been
We're looking
charged,
at it right now. That's that footage with
yeah, had this man not been charged, and with the media attention and the constant playing of the tapes and people speculating about the facts and rumors and things of that nature, you could very well have seen civil unrest, rioting.
Armstrong, are the African-American leaders, I've got less than a minute here, are the African-American leaders who are stepping up and making this as an opportunity to bring these issues back to the fore, are they stirring up a hornet's nest unnecessarily?
I don't think they themselves are working to stir up a hornet's nest. I think that Reverend Sharpton and Reverend Jesse Jackson, what they represent and the reputations of the past and what they find themselves associated with, people cannot forget that symbolism and the images with that. And so the images in and of itself stirs up controversy. You just cannot separate one from the other. And it is a fact that these leaders pick and choose where they decide to show up and advocate justice. And that's something you can argue.
But this can't continue to be a referendum on Reverend Sharpton and Reverend Jackson. They have been involved in this case in particular. You've had almost 40 days of protest of some form or another,
break here, Jeff.
where there's
I'm sorry
been
to interrupt.
no
We'll be right
violence,
back.
no
Keep this
arrest.
conversation